Hello and welcome to Missed Checkpoints, the Video Game Book Club podcast. Today we're starting our discussion on Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. I'm your host Marqus, and joining me today as always are the homies. First off, we have Greg.
What up?
Next, we got Trevor.
Objection.
And last but not least, we got the homie Dante.
Hold it.
Since this is Dante's choice, I'm gonna kick it to him, and he's going to introduce the game.
Alrighty. So, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney is a visual novel adventure where you're placed in the shoes of Phoenix Wright, a rookie lawyer. The game was released originally on the Game Boy Advance back in 2001, but it has been ported to a multitude of devices, including the DS, the primary version that we're all playing essentially, the Nintendo 3DS, the Wii, the Nintendo Switch, Windows in Japan, iOS, and Android. Okay. It was developed by Capcom and directed by Shu Takemi. Takemi worked with Shinji Mikami of Devil May Cry fame on Dino Crisis. Eventually, he was given his own team and developed Gyakuten Saiban, which translates to Turnabout Trial. And essentially, he released a trilogy of games originally for the Game Boy Advance. He moved on to develop a game called Ghost Trick for the Nintendo DS, and eventually went on to make a spin-off of Ace Attorney called Dai Gyakuten Saiban, which literally stands for Great Ace Attorney. Shu Takemi also voices Phoenix Wright in Japan. So the segment of game we played up to this point has been roughly 8 hours worth of gameplay, which covers the first 3 trials. So for me, Phoenix Wright was always this really interesting thing. I found out about it when I was looking at ROMs way back in the day, and somebody translated Case 1 of the third Ace Attorney game. I ended up picking it up and being like, wow, this is such a weird thing. I'm a lawyer and I'm presenting evidence and shouting objection and stuff like that. And it caught me then. Eventually, the original Ace Attorney got localized and put out on the Nintendo DS in the US. So I got into the series from there, and it's pretty much just been a roller coaster ride ever since. So like I said, in the US, Ace Attorney's kind of been a cult classic type of thing, whereas in Japan, it's kind of been this really big cultural movement. I don't want to call it a movement, but it's very popular over there. So there's 6 mainline games, a 7th game incoming, a manga, an anime, a movie, musicals, and then there's 3 spin-offs. There's Dai Gyakuten Saiban, which I already told you about, Gyakuten Kenji, where you play as a prosecutor, and then they also had a crossover with Professor Layton. Okay, so the original Ace Attorney occurs in 2016, and in the Japanese version it takes place in Japan, whereas in the localization they actually moved everything to quote-unquote take place in the United States. The story starts in medias res, which means in the middle of things. Phoenix Wright is in the courtroom, about to walk into his first trial. They don't really introduce anybody other than him and his boss, Mia Fey. And that kind of brings us to the beginning of the game.
And thank you for that intro. And I guess before we even get into the game, you kind of gave a little backstory on your history with the game. Did you say what version you were playing?
So that's kind of a complicated thing. So originally I played the DS version. I have the 3DS trilogy, which is a quote-unquote HD remaster. I didn't like the art style, so I ended up playing the DS version on my phone.
So you basically, Phoenix Wright fanboy, ended up and have every version, basically.
I
That's
have
cool.
bought this game at least 4 times.
Hey, no shame in that. No shame in that. I myself, I'm playing the 3DS version. I got the trilogy, and I have no history whatsoever with Phoenix Wright. I actually remember in college when you would I don't know, talk about the game, or I remember you bringing it up every now and then, and my only brush up with Phoenix Wright is from the Marvel vs. Capcom series. He got introduced in the Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and he was like a weird, wonky RNG based character, and I didn't really have any interest in the character, but one of my
It was
good
probably
friends.
not the best first impression.
Yeah, yeah. But one of my good friends, he's in the fighting game community. He Jonas, he plays Phoenix Wright, and he's pretty good with the character, and he's a huge fan of the series. So he was very excited when I told him that I would finally play a Phoenix Wright, and he was super excited to hear about what we had to say about this game. What about you, Trevor? Do you have any background with Phoenix Wright, and what version of the game are you playing?
I played the game on iOS, simply because y'all said that was the worst version, and I just wanted to test the waters. But I have no experience whatsoever with the series. I've heard about it, I've known about it, but I got a 3DS, but I really only use it to play like Pokemon games, and so I'm glad, you know, like I think I ended up buying the trilogy just because I'll probably play the other games after we finish with this one.
Okay, cool, cool. And what about you, Greg? What version are you playing, and what's your background with Phoenix Wright?
So I'm playing on a 3DS right now. So I didn't realize that I had the entire trilogy at some point. I don't know when I acquired it, but in looking for the original, I guess Ace Attorney, I found out that I had all of them. So I did play a little bit of the first one. I think I had finished just the first case and just kind of bounced off it because I just don't really have a strong attachment to handheld games. So, so yeah, I did play a little bit of it, but now this is kind of like my first time really digging into it.
Cool, cool. So yeah, we got like one person that's familiar with the franchise, and the rest of us are treading the waters. And so far, what it seems like is I think the three of us new people do kind of dig the game. We'll find out though. Um, we'll kick it. I'm gonna kick it back to Dante. So he kind of introduced the initial case, or uh, the premise, how you just get dropped in. So why don't you tell us about what happens in that first case, Dante?
Okay, so the first case, and this is kind of I don't want to say trope for the trilogy, but a standard thing with the trilogy. They kind of tell you who did it for the first case. Like, there's no mystery as far as like, oh, who's the murderer or whatever. The intro scene shows Mr. Sawit literally clunking Cindy Stone in the back of the head with the thinker. And from there you go into the court. You meet Larry Butts, who is an old childhood friend of Phoenix Wright, and part of the reason Wright became an attorney in the first place. And from there, you're kind of really just thrown into the trial. Do you want to take it over for just a second?
Sure. So kind of like what he said, basically the premise of the first case is this is your first time as Phoenix Wright. This is his very first case as a defense attorney. And so his assistant, or his helper in this case, is Mia Fey, who is his mentor and his boss. She runs the law office that he works for. And he's charged with defending his childhood friend Larry Butts after Larry is accused of murdering his ex-girlfriend Cindy Stone. And you get to kind of at this point meet an interesting cast of characters. So Phoenix, who's like a very green defense attorney, and he's very unsure of himself. He's unproven, untested, and he doesn't. He does a lot of inner monologues with himself when he talks to witnesses, and even just dealing with the other prosecutor and then the judge. Larry, he's a lovable guy. I think Phoenix Wright kind of says that he means well. he means well, but he just always is in the wrong place at the wrong time. Oh, what's up, Dante? You had something you want to say?
My bad. Yeah, when it smells, it's usually the butts. Is kind of like the phrase Wright always uses when describing Larry. And also, he going back to what Marqus was saying about Wright being green behind the ears or whatever. It's very interesting how they translate that into dialogue and also sometimes gameplay mechanics. So one of the first things you'll notice is you'll see all of these monologues happening with Wright, and he's like, "Oh, I don't know if this is gonna work out," or "Oh, I'm kind of feeling nervous right now." And then that also translates to the tutorial, and kind of wanted to read the room on what you guys thought of the tutorial part of this.
Just this case being the tutorial, this intro case.
Just like even like the start where it's like, "Oh, well, hey, Wright, you need to access the court record, and this is how you present stuff." And so,
Yeah. Okay. So when the game opens up, Mia, I think it's even before you walk into the courtroom or right when you get in there, she kind of gives you the player a quick, like you said, tutorial on how you're going to operate in this trial mode. And so she kind of says like, oh, what you need to do is you need to hit this button to access the evidence, all the different evidence that we've acquired, and you can kind of read a little short blurb on every piece of evidence, and they have like crucial details. So like it will say like, oh, here's the I think it's the coroner report for the victim, and so like they died of head trauma caused at X time, like 9 o'clock at night or something like that, and you can kind of see like, so you can see like a coroner report, you can kind of see the murder weapon, and just little details and stuff on the different pieces of evidence, and you can kind of get like a little blurb background information on some of the characters, yourself, the Mia, and then like the victim, the prosecutor, the judge, the defendant, so you can kind of see a little bit of background information on everybody, and she kind of tells you like, oh, you need to constantly, cross examine what this person is saying based off the evidence you have, because you don't ever want to get caught, like not calling somebody on some type of lie. You're always like trying to check what they're saying and make sure what they're saying is actually factual and not like, some a lie or them forgetting some of the key details. Trevor, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I really like this tutorial. It introduces you to like a core component of the game because, and I'm sure the listeners know by now there's going to be spoilers in this, but like later on in the game, you actually have to use the same skills that you use in the courtroom, like as far as looking through your court records, presenting some of that evidence to, people that you run into in order to use items. So I think this is a really cool way to introduce that kind of mechanic to the player.
And Trevor, I'm sorry, not Trevor. Greg, how did you feel about the this like brief tutorial on the trial mode?
Kind of mirrored what everybody else is saying. I enjoyed it as well. I thought it was a pretty good introduction on kind of bringing you up to snuff with how the the court record, how that's gonna work. I was interested to see how big a room for error that you had in this, if like there's going to be any tricky stuff to it, if there's going to be anything that was going to kind of throw you off course as far as getting the conviction, but it didn't seem like it was going to happen, or it didn't come up this time. So, but I thought it was a pretty good way to introduce all the mechanics to the game so far.
Dante, how did you feel about it? Do you feel like it was adequate enough, or do you feel like it was missing anything?
like I really enjoy how they did it, just because it doesn't feel like a tutorial. Like after you're done with the case, you're like, oh, that was the tutorial. But when you're in it, it just feels like, oh, I need to figure out how this guy is lying, and they see the breadcrumb trail enough.
Gross.
So Yeah, that is pretty gross. I object to that. But they seed it so you'd never feel like you're really like being held by the hand directly, but there's just enough there that you can figure out and piece the actual events that happened by yourself.
It's pretty seamless too, because like even when you're actually in the case, like a lot of times, so I guess that we can kind of get into the gameplay, at least with the trial mode, is so the prosecutor or the judge will ask if you guys have anything that you want to do. Then the prosecutor will call forth the first witness. The witness will give his testimony of like with the events that the events that transpired, and then it's up to you to like kind of cross-examine what the witness said, his testimony, so that way you can kind of see any flaws or any things, any holes that you can poke into his testimony to like kind of say like, oh well, this person couldn't have been here, or they couldn't have done this because of this or whatever. So the cool thing, at least the thing that I liked about it was, you as the player, this is your first time going through this, and you kind of like get dropped into it head first. But even when you're like, oh well, what he said sounded fine to me, like you can just kind of, Mia, your assistant, who's your boss, she kind of almost works like like the manual or something. She's like, make sure you do this, and you. So she wants you to always press the witness for all the smallest details to make sure that they're not leaving anything out. And then that's like it's a good rule of thumb for this game, but it's like super interesting that like somebody makes reference of it later on in this game, but it was a cool moment where she's like, it's like she's coaching you as Phoenix Wright, but then she's also coaching you as the player playing as Phoenix Wright, because it's like, this is in theory your first case, and this is also Phoenix Wright's first case. So it's really interesting how they do that, and it doesn't seem tacky or like forced. It seems natural, even like the way she's like trying to help you along. It seems like it just seems seamless. Dante?
And just a quick aside, like when you press somebody on parts of their testimony, even if you don't press them on something important, the writing is really, really good in this game, in my opinion. And there's always like interesting tidbits. So even if you could like ask them about the most random thing, it could be like, oh, I woke up at 5 o'clock today and the murder happened at 7 or something like that. And normally it will just end up being some weird aside. And they just kind of incentivize you to press in a lot of different ways.
And like he said, it does seem the dialogue in this game it's awesome to me. Everything is so seamless. So like when you press somebody on something, like they make a statement like, let's see, let me think of a statement. I was in a hurry because he left the door. I thought he must be in a hurry because he left the door half open behind him. And then like when you press that statement as Phoenix Wright, like he'll say something like, so then you like, what did he look like he was or like, did he look like he was panicked or something like that? And just like every time you ask a question, it seems like an actual viable question that somebody would ask in that circumstance to kind of get a gauge of what this witness actually saw. And then like even like their responses, sometimes they're like accusatory, where they're like, are you trying to say that I didn't see what I saw or something like that? Or, are you trying to say that I lied about this? Or like the writing in this game, like it's like 80% of this game, or like 60 to 80% of this game is just like, has to do with just talking to people. And I don't feel like this game would go anywhere if the writing wasn't compelling and like organic and just seem realistic, and it does. And sometimes it gets like, they have all different types of characters, and literally like there's different characters and they all have like a character, or they're like, so there's like the wisecracking guy, the super sensual character. There's like a super cowardly person. There's a super brave person. They have all different types of personality traits, and they come through in the writing, and it's awesome to me. So like this was the first case that you kind of get a feel for that, and I was super into it after doing this first case. After doing this first case, I was like, oh man, like I like where this is going. Did you have that moment, Greg, or because you said you played the first case a while ago? Did it still not hit you this after doing the first case?
No, like even when I first played it, like I enjoyed it. It's just kind of one of those things of like just the nature of how I play games. It's just kind of like I don't really play on handheld a lot, so that's the only reason I kind of bounced off it. I liked it, and it's kind of the same sentiment this time around. Like going through it kind of piqued my interest, and had me kind of interested to see where the next trial would go.
Gotcha. What about you, Trevor? Like, how did you feel about just some of the writing and like specifically with this first case? How did you feel like how some of the characters were fleshed out, and just like did it seem natural to you, or did you have any enjoyment or like wanted to see where this game was going?
Yeah, you kind of touched on one of the parts that I was going to mention about the dialogue as far as each of the individual characters and how well it influences your perception of them. Like, because there's no actual voice acting in this game. It's all just written dialogue. You have to read it. But while I was reading, I could still get a sense of like how each character was actually talking. Some of their mannerisms kind of influenced like their voice that was in my head.
Yeah, like you see, like, because it's kind of interesting too, because this is like the game. I don't even know how you describe this art style. It's like they're almost like stills that kind of have a little bit of animation in certain parts. So then, like when somebody's like super frustrated or something, like you can see it on their face. Like it will keep shifting back and forth between them being like smiling to being angry or something like that, or being frustrated. And I think even with just that subtle like change in like the art, like I feel like it does a good job of pushing across whatever personality or whatever that character's feeling in the moment, in addition to the writing. Dante?
I was just going to add on to Trevor's point. Even though there's not dialogue, they do this really smart thing where they time the beeps of the perceived dialogue. So it's one of those things where it's like beep, 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 beep as the text is going across the screen, and it changes to the tempo of the text being written to screen. So even though there's nothing being said, you still get an inflection of how it's being said. And when you mirror that with all of the different animations in this game, it comes together and it becomes this really nice, cohesive package. Like, go ahead.
I was gonna say, how would you even describe this animation? Are they stills or like?
There's stills, but they have a certain, I don't know, just a certain feel to them that it's not very common for games. It's more of a visual novel style.
Like yeah.
They're reaction memes. That's what they are.
I mean,
it's memes before memes, and it does such a good job of like being legitimately genuine with each one of the characters. Feels like their own person. Even the smallest side character, you remember their name years after you play this game, which I think is astounding.
Part of that too is these names are ridiculous.
Should we get into that a little bit?
Yeah, like I mean, there's a lot to get into this game because, like, I mean, just the characters themselves are like they feel like all unique characters, but then just like and the writing in this game is fantastic, and just like the names too. I mean, there's actually not really a standout name in this first case besides like I think
Solid is pretty good.
It is?
Frank Solid? Like...
Oh, I didn't even get that.
Aha.
I didn't even get that. Oh, okay, so I'm the only one? Okay.
No, I didn't get it either until you just said that. But
I know, like, when you were saying whenever there's bad situation or a stinky situation.
Whenever it smells, it's the butts.
Yeah, and then it was funny or interesting because the detective kept calling them Harry Butts instead of Larry Butts. Yeah.
They do so much good stuff with the names.
Yeah, they do. Do we? How do we want to tackle this first case? Because we lay down the groundwork. You kind of get the feeling of how to do the trial mode. A lot of what you're doing when you're listening to the witness, when you're cross-examining his testimony, is you're presenting evidence that contradicts the things that he's saying, or
should we cover hold it in objection and that type of stuff?
Sure.
Yeah. So each witness has their own cross-examination phase. They give you certain statements. You look through the statements. You can either press or present. Pressing does what Marqus was talking about earlier, where you get them to elaborate on essentially what they were saying, and sometimes you can get an additional statement if you find out they were, concealing details, or
that's the hold it.
Find something. Yes, that's the hold it. So you can press a button to hold it, or you can hit its Y on the DS and speak into the microphone and just yell, "Hold it!"
Really?
Something like that. You didn't know that?
No.
Bro, what if I told you when you're presenting evidence, you hold Y and you yell, "Objection"?
I didn't know that.
Is that in the tutorial?
So good.
No, it's not in the tutorial.
Okay, I was about to say, because they don't have any kind of feature like that on iOS.
You playing on the wrong system,
it has
dog?
to be.
Well, I do have vibration, so it's got a rumble pack in there.
Did you know that, Greg?
Nope.
See, okay, I'm not crazy.
I'm 99% sure this is in there.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying I didn't know that, so I'm gonna definitely the next case I play, I'm gonna try that. So so if you want them to elaborate, like he said, hold it, and that will he'll Phoenix Wright will yell out, "Hold it," and then he'll ask his question, and they elaborate, and then objection. What happens when you object, Dante?
So, pretty much when a witness is going through their little, testimony thing, there's always something wrong with it. Well, I shouldn't say always, but most of the time there's something wrong with it. And when you find out a lie and you have evidence to back your claim that it's a lie, you go to your court record, you present the evidence with an objection, and that's kind of how you move the gameplay along.
It's kind of the only, or I won't say the only thing, because I'm not sure if this is something that consistently happens or it doesn't happen, but you can't progress through the game without pointing out a flaw in somebody's testimony, right? So it's almost like it's kind of holding your hand in a sense, where it's like Mia will be like, well, what was the contradiction in that testimony? And so you can go through all of it and think that you've pointed out all the flaws and you think it's a solid testimony, and then you'll get to the end and then she'll be like, I want you to think hard about it, Phoenix, and blah, blah, blah. There has to be some type of contradiction here somewhere. So it's kind of like running up against the game in a sense. And I kind of wish you could, there is a game part of this that you can fail. And that is you have I want to say 5 chances to present evidence to object to a statement. And if you present the wrong evidence, the judge will be like, this doesn't have any relevance to the case. And you'll get docked. And so the only fail in this is if you present 5 pieces of evidence that wasn't relevant to whatever the discussion was. And then you'll start from your previous save point. But other than that, there's not necessarily it's not a hard game, I guess. It's fun, but it's not hard, if that makes any sense.
Well, we haven't gotten to case 4 and case 5.
Okay, so that's what I was thinking. Is like so far what we've run up against, and I have failed where I've run up into something where it's like I don't see what's wrong with any of the statements that this person is saying, but clearly I'm missing something. So it got to a point where I was kind of just guessing evidence because I was like, "There's nothing else that I can do." I've cross-examined everything else that this person has said. Did you run into anything like that, Greg? Or
No, but I did have a question for Dante since he had played it previously. So there's a few sections in the game where you kind of get choices, or it seems as if there's like branching paths, but is it just kind of like you have, like you could answer it, but it's still going to be the same outcome regardless of what choice that you pick?
Yeah, some of that's, well, most of it's flavor text, but I do think it does a good job of letting you, quote-unquote, customize your Phoenix Wright a little bit, because you can make him seem really, really incompetent in that first trial if you want to, but if you know what you're doing, like, it's bam, 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 bam. And some of those choices you're talking about, like, they'll have repercussions if you choose the wrong answer, but other times it's just kind of one of those things where it just wants you to think a little bit more than you normally would.
So the only real point of failure is just during the like cross-examinations, like just presenting bad evidence at that point, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
okay. Back to case 1. How do we want to talk about this? I'm asking that. I'm asking you, Dante. How do you want to?
I mean, let's try to go through the like. This is a very difficult game to lay out for you guys, but we're gonna do our best.
Yeah. Let's see. All right. So basically, your childhood friend is on trial, accused of murdering his ex-girlfriend with a statue/clock that he built for her. And the witness is a person named Frank Saw It, who apparently his name is also a pun. Spoilers. And so basically he's the only person that he supposedly witnessed Larry quickly leaving Stone's apartment and leaving the door open. And so he waltzed over and kind of checked what was going on, and he saw the slain body, the beaten body of Cindy Stone, and that's when he notified the police and kind of said what happened. And so basically, this case, the entire time he's the witness, and you're cross-examining a lot of the statements and things that he's saying. So like you cross-check him on, did you actually call the police immediately? Because the power was supposedly out in this building, or did you? How did you know what time you saw it at? Because like the power was out. Did you actually go into the room? Because earlier you said you didn't go into the room. So did you or did you not? And you kind of cross-examined him the entire time, and you eventually get him very, very flustered, and you come to. Go ahead.
Can we just talk about how good the animations in this game are? Like, just the way he has his little, like, the way he goes back and forth with his shoulders as he's, like, talking to you. And he just seems like the most inconspicuous Japanese businessman ever in a video game.
But he's not even a businessman. You end up finding out that he's a con artist almost, ultimately, in your cross-examination. But yeah, like it's really, his animation is super interesting because he's kind of, like he said, he's moving his shoulders back and forth, and he's like, has like a super cheery smile on his face, and he's rubbing his hands together almost. And then when you fluster him, his facial animations completely change, and he's a little bit angry and like more tense. And
he
it's really
throws his toupee at you.
Yeah, so it's really interesting, and it's cool too because as you are, I mean, this witness is supposed to be sealing the case, for the prosecutor, and even like when you are, um, when you are cross-examining the witness, the prosecutor is objecting sometimes to some of the questions that you're asking, and it's interesting to see what the judge deems is worth being overruled or objected to versus what he wants to find more information about. And it's interesting to see like even the prosecutor get a little bit more frustrated as his quote unquote star witness or witness is losing him the case. So it's cool to see these two characters kind of just get more and more flustered as you are, showing them up in your very first case. But I think, I mean, I don't want to make blanket statements, but inevitably, the person that you are defending, Larry, is deemed not guilty. It ends up being Frank Sowit is actually the person that killed Cindy Stone. So, go ahead, Dante.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, essentially the crux of the murder was this clock called the Thinker. But just looking at it from the outside, you wouldn't know it's a clock. It looks like a literal statue of the Thinker. And essentially, you catch Solid in a lie where he knows it's a clock, even though there's no way he could have known that without entering the room. And kind of from there is where his gradual decline into pretty much insanity. At one point, he starts foaming at the mouth. It's really, really good. And you just keep pressing him, and eventually you catch him in his lies, and not guilty for Larry.
Yeah, and it's almost like like a he, Larry is obviously very appreciative that he gets off, but he's also just like sad because not only is this girl that he cared about, or quote unquote cared about, dead, he was trying to get back with her, but he didn't think that she cared about him, and apparently like the whole like to cheer him up is I think Mia kind of says like, oh, if she didn't care about you, she wouldn't have kept the clock and all that, and that kind of helps cheer him up. And Trevor, you had something you want to add?
Yeah, there was a screenshot I actually took of that where the prosecutor is basically like, yeah, she had several sugar daddies.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I forgot. Cindy was like a model or something, and she was like flown to like Paris or something for something, and so like she took the clock with her, and that was his like, oh well, she thought so enough or she cared enough about you to bring this clock that you handmade for her with her to France to be her alarm clock while she's seeing her sugar daddies. But yeah.
Also, Larry is kind of the worst at times. Like, one of the first things that happens to Phoenix Wright in this game is he's in the courtroom and he's just trying to make his case, and then Larry just bursts in. He's like, just sentence me to death already. I did it. Nothing matters. This all sucks.
Yeah, he's very dramatic, but I mean that's I feel like everybody in this game is a little dramatic. They're all turned up a little bit. Um, but yeah, you ended up proving Larry's innocence, and that kind of, I think the end story or the aftermath. I think every case you kind of see like after the decision, like that you meet with the characters and the the defendant outside of the courtroom, and you guys kind of wrap it up, and you I think you end up giving the clock to Mia. Um, you give the clock, the evidence or the murder weapon. You give it to Mia, and she. What happens after that, Dante? Is it that same night?
Yeah, so are we transitioning into case 2 now?
Yeah, yeah.
So the murder weapon from case 1, the Thinker, is promptly used to murder Mia Fey, your mentor, not too long after that. I think it is a couple nights later.
Okay. Yeah, so then you go from, you see this, everybody's congratulating and, having a grand old time, and then you start up case 2, and then just like in the beginning of case 1, case 2, you see the actual incident happen, and you see, I think it's Mia, she's having a phone conversation with her younger sister, Maya, about supposedly picking up something from her office at 9 o'clock. And then fast forward to later on in that day, and she's having a conversation with some man and in her office, and he beats her over the head with this piece of evidence, this thinker clock. So this clock is basically a murder weapon in back-to-back cases. And that's kind of how I think case 2 starts off.
And your tutorial ends.
Yeah, exactly. And so case 2 starts off with you getting to the office that next morning to get ready for work, and you smell this. I smell blood, and you kind of walk to you walk into Mia's office, and you see a young girl crying over her dead body, and yeah, so you end up finding out, oh, well, this is her younger sister, Maya. So Mia's been murdered, and Maya was supposed to be meeting her at 9 o'clock, and yeah, that's basically how case 2 starts off.
And
Go
I
ahead,
was just going
Dante.
to say that this is kind of where the game starts to get a little bit weird.
Japanese.
It was already weird, but
It gets
yeah.
Japanese.
It gets very Japanese. Like, you find out that Mia's sister, Maya, happens to be a spirit medium in training, and it's just a lot of weird stuff that starts happening at this point.
Yeah, so you kind of, and I think this is how they introduce the investigation portion of the game. So when you're in court, that is the trial mode, and then when you are in outside of court, you're in investigation mode. And so in investigation mode, you can walk around to, or I say walk around, but you hit a a button that says move, and then you can move to predetermined locations. And you can kind of scan whatever environment you are in and kind of get a little bit of text, flavor text about the different things. So you can, you first investigate the room, Mia's office, to see like, oh, well, this clock was knocked over. Oh, this thing was in her hand and written in blood. This her computer desk was very disorganized. Her computer chair was knocked over. Or you can talk to her sister Maya, and you can kind of see like, so what was going on? Like, why are you here? Who are you? What was the last time conversation with her that you got? And this is kind of how, in this investigation mode, this is how you get evidence that you are going to present in trial, and this is how you get like more background evidence and more background information that you can present. So a lot of times, well, not so much in this case, but like you can get some information from a person that it's for you, the player, to know. But Phoenix Wright, he kind of like, I don't know, it's hard to say he internalizes it, but like sometimes I've noticed that I get this piece of information from this character, and I guess now that since I saw it, Phoenix Wright, the character, knows it. So when I'm cross-examining somebody in the trial, like he'll bring up, oh, well, this person said this, and it's kind of weird because it's like sometimes I feel like I don't remember this little snippet of information, but like as long as I see it, he will remember it. Trevor, did you run anything like that, or you have anything to add about that?
Yeah, I've ran into that same thing, and then at times, sometimes Phoenix Wright would have that person write like a written statement that you could then use for court, and I'm thinking, okay, to what extent can you make like everything somebody says a written statement? Like, there's a bunch of stuff somebody just said that I'm not going to remember, but I could make it into a written statement or an affidavit.
Yeah, it was really weird because it was just like I remember one time. I don't remember the instance, but I do remember there being a time where like I had completely forgot some piece of evidence like that was presented that was or some crucial piece of information that was told to me, and then I'm like playing through the game and like I'm like I cross-examined somebody and then he brings it up and I'm like, what? Where did he even get that from? And I like completely forgot that I had that conversation with somebody. Dante, you got something you want to add about that?
I just kind of wanted to see how you guys felt about the examination or investigation portion of the game.
Aha, yeah. So yeah, you get a little bit of information from Maya about what happened when she first gets there, and then immediately like you're examining the room, and some girl from the hotel across the street or whatever, her window is lined up to the office that you're in, and so she sees the victim. She sees Mia's body on the floor. And so she calls the police, and then the police show up, and it's this detective name. He has a great name, by the way. His name is Detective Dick Gumshoe. And he's... How do you guys feel about the detective? Because from here on out, he pretty much shows up. At least he shows up in these first two cases. And from what I read, he seems like he shows up a lot.
He's I think so far he's one of my favorite characters just because of like how how pretty inept he is about everything, and it's kind of fun just to see him just give away things or just kind of say something kind of stupid offhand, and I've enjoyed the sections he's been in so far.
Trevor, how do you feel about Detective Gumshoe? He's pretty absent-minded, right?
Yeah, but his theme though, his music theme.
Pretty good.
I actually don't remember his music theme.
The music in general in this game is really good.
That's something we haven't touched on either. Is one of the cool things about this game is like not every character, but like a lot of characters have their own individual theme music when they're on the screen. So that's kind of interesting because you run into so many different types of characters, and they each have like a theme song. In addition to that too, when you're in the in trial mode, when you're in the cross-examination stage, you have a theme versus there's different types of themes in the trial mode as well. So since I'm in that mode a lot more often, I like those are more ingrained in my mind, the trial mode themes.
I was just going to say that they also do a really, really good job of transitioning between pieces in this game.
Yes.
Where you can tell who's talking, what the mood is, and kind of just get a backdrop of everything that's happening and culminating at the same time.
Yeah. But yeah, so you kind of, meet the detective, and he ends up... I don't even know if he sees the evidence or what, but there is the piece of evidence that is the most damning is that Mia has a receipt in her hand, and on the back of it, written in her own blood, is her sister's name, Maya. So that seems like all the evidence they need to basically say she is she committed the murder. And so basically you have to clear her name, and so he ends up taking her into booking, and then at this point you can travel back and forth between Mia's office and booking and kind of interrogate her and talk to her, and also what's up, Trevor?
I don't want to jump too far ahead, but did it not bother anybody that the receipt itself wasn't relevant enough to flip it over and see, what it was for?
There's a lot of situations like that in this game where I just kind of like, I'm like, really, bruh? We're not gonna think about this like that. We're just okay.
I mean, with the context though, the receipt didn't mean anything until it got used.
I mean, yeah.
The other
Yeah.
side of the receipt, like
Yeah, you're right.
there's a very crucial thing about it, but before that, it wouldn't have mattered until that point. But there are some inconsistencies. There are little holes here and there.
Yeah. And this is that first case was very short. It was just the trial stage, and then I think this case you kind of see the structure of this game where it goes between these cases. I mean, they end up taking multiple days where it will go, okay, you start the beginning immediately after the murder. You're doing the investigation stage. Then once you've acquired enough of the evidence and like just statements from key witnesses and stuff like that, then you go into trial mode, and then you do your trial, and that's when you cross-examine the witness and everything. And then when it seems like, oh, we haven't pressed this person hard enough, or we need to talk to a different person, then you starts up the next day. And so then day 2 you start off and you can do more investigating, and you can see some new locations and talk to some new people and find some new evidence, and then you go back to the courthouse. So I think this was a 2-day trial, right, Dante?
Wasn't it 3?
I think this case was just 2 days.
It's a 2-day.
Oh yeah. I think they at the end they say, oh, we need to do another day, and then they stop. Well, anyway, I'm spoiling it, but whatever. Like, we're gonna get to that point anyway. But yeah, I think that's what happens towards the end.
So yeah, at this point, pretty much you're in the precinct with Maya, and she's like, my sister said if I ever get in trouble, contact Grossberg, I believe.
Yeah. He's supposedly like another attorney that Maya used to work for when she was younger, before she got her own firm. And you go to him, and that dude does not want no parts of dealing with Maya. So then you kind of go to her, and you're like, hey, I went to him, but he didn't seem very willing, so I'll do it for you. And man, she throws like some huge shade your direction. She was like, my sister told me about your first day, and she said like you had a lot of promise, but
Give it 3 years.
Yeah, give it 3 years, and like that like, oh my god, that was so that was so like so many shots fired, because it was like and it's true though, he had one case. He worked one case that he like I won't say barely won, but like he kind of lucked his way into winning, and this is his next case, and it's defending his former boss's, or his deceased boss's daughter or sister. So I don't know. It was very funny, but I don't know. Like Maya is a high school. She's a high schooler. Like I think she's 17 or something. So she also is pretty green, and like she's like almost like, I don't want to say pure, but she's very like childish, and I don't know. She's kind of endearing in a way. Do you guys feel any type of way about Maya? Like, do you guys like her as a character? I'll start with you, Trevor.
She's interesting. Like, I'm hoping there's gonna be like a growing side to her, or like a side story where in her, like, what do you call it? I forgot what she said she was. She's a spirit in training, or medium in training. Yeah. So I'm just wondering, like, throughout the game, are we gonna see her progress at all, and is that gonna affect the way Phoenix is able to win some of the battles throughout the game?
I don't know. I mean, you kind of see it a little bit in the next case, or it might even be in this case. You see it a little bit, but
It's at the very end of this one.
Yeah, and you see it a little bit in case 3 as well. But it's like kind of, I don't know. Like I'm interested to see if it pops up any other ways because the way it pops up, I'm not mad at, but it's just kind of like.
Yeah, that
why did they even
the way they introduce it is very they were reaching.
Let's not jump ahead too much. There will be a second.
But yeah, I'm hoping she reveals some other powers that she might have.
And how do you feel about me? This is the problem too. Their names are too damn close. How do you feel about Maya, Greg?
I like her so far. Kind of going off what Trevor was saying, that I'm kind of interested to see, how as a character, how she develops further on into the game, because you do end up seeing some stuff with her powers of being a medium. But I'm not. I don't know. I guess that's the thing that I'm kind of waiting to see how the other foot drops on it. But right now, I think she's a pretty interesting character so far, kind of quirky.
Gotcha. And I'm assuming she's a mainstay character because I know in Marvel vs. Capcom she was a pretty significant part of Phoenix Wright's arsenal in that game. So I reckon that she stays with him throughout the series.
That's a safe bet.
All right. And actually, another, I want to say, regular occurring character. So you got the introduction of these major characters in Maya and Dick Gumshoe. But then when you go to the trial, this is when you meet the prosecutor, and he seems like way more...
Can we backtrack just a smidge?
Go ahead.
So, in the first investigation, you go to the Gatewater Hotel, which is also a really good name, and you meet the person who saw the murder from the window, April May. Do you guys have any thoughts on April?
She could get it. I don't know. No, she's just like a super sensual character. She's very bipolar seeing. She's what is it? What do they say? She's a well-endowed, flirty young woman with pink hair. So she's very interesting, and it's kind of funny because when you first encounter her, she mistakes you for a detective, I think, and so she's a little forthcoming with information. But then when you kind of reveal yourself as the attorney, then she kind of is like less forthcoming with information and kind of says like, you're cheating, like why are you trying to get this information, just see me tomorrow, or so it's just kind of interesting. Anybody got anything else to add about her? Or cool. But yeah, so when you get to the trial, this is when you meet the prosecutor, and he's another, I'm assuming, mainstay in this series. His name is Miles Edgeworth, and he's like the anti-Phoenix, right? He's a prodigy. So he's just as, I think he's like around the same age, or he's around the same age as you, maybe a little younger, but he's been a prosecutor since he was 20. And he has I think he almost by any means he's going to find somebody guilty. So he has like a very like black and white view of the world. And he has basically, there's rumors that he has a willingness to do anything to achieve a guilty verdict. And he's a very, very great prosecutor, but there's like questions to his ethics almost. How do you guys feel about Miles? Because he seems like it almost. I can't think. I'm gonna make a bad reference because it's bad only in the sense that I don't remember their names. But he almost seemed like if you're what is the rival to Yu-Gi-Oh?
Seto Kaiba.
Kaiba?
Does he not have that kind of like?
I was thinking that the whole time. Like,
does he not have that kind of like?
Every time he popped up, I was thinking, man, are we about to start dueling?
It was like a super
You
battle
kind
of
of
the
do.
wits. It's a battle of the wits, because it's like anytime you feel like when you're doing the trial mode and you feel like you have the witness on the ropes on a lie or whatever, then this dude it just says something like objection. That has nothing to do with the case, or like he's just like super smooth, and he'll be like, I mean, you merely just proved that that could have happened. That doesn't mean it did happen. Do you have anything that you could, And it's just like every time, it's just like this dude right here. I don't know. He actually might be my favorite character because it's even super fun. Or I like when he gets mad because he slams his fist on the desk and he looks like super angry and gets like crazy eyes and like almost like he's biting his lip. And like when he gets flustered, it's very interesting as well. What's up, Dante?
I was just gonna say, but like when he calls you out, it it makes you feel
It hurts.
bad. It makes you feel so bad sometimes because when you say objection, you get so hype, and then he takes you from that ledge and just slowly pulls you off of it, and you're like, oh my god, how am I ever gonna recover from this? It's like the
Right?
person who's like calling you out in class on something.
Dude, it's so like it's so because the way he's written too is so good, where he just seems like the right amount of like he's kind of like an asshole, but he at the same time he's very confident and cocky and he's like self assured. He knows what he's doing, and he's like I can't believe they put me up against this person. This rookie, as almost he has that kind of air of like superiority against you, and so like when he like calls you out on something, you kind of almost, like you said, personally feel attacked.
He shakes his head and then does the shrug emoji.
Yeah, yeah.
Does anybody like the animation where he's like tapping his head, like he's just sitting there, like, all right, bro, I got you.
Dude, I think he has my favorite. I think he might be my favorite character, but he definitely has my favorite reactions. Cause like even later on, like I'm not gonna spoil it, but like some of the things he does in like case 3, like I mean he does like it's the same canned animations. Like he's not doing anything different in case 3 than he does in case 2, but just like the moments where he does it is just way more funny to me in case 3. um, but yeah, I really like that character. So but yeah, you end up uh, cross-examining April May, and you kind of call her bluff on some of the things that she supposedly saw, and so you end up like the person that has to vouch for her is she says that she got some type of room service. So you end up having to the next day you go around, you talk to the bellboy, you talk to April May some more, you find out some background information on her, you find out some more background information on the Faye family. So you kind of find out that before she became a attorney, Mia was also a medium, and she was a darn good medium, and but she kind of got run out of town by some guy named Mr. White, some mysterious figure named Mr. White, and
Well, just a quick clarification. So, Mia and Maya's mother was this really great spirit medium, and she essentially, the police called on her for a special case to conjure up a dead person, essentially, and say, okay, this is who did it. So she conjured up the soul. She got the person, but then it turns out that he gave the wrong answer. So that kind of shamed their family, and the police tried to keep it on the down low, but somebody leaked it to the reporters. So Mia went out to pretty much prosecute that person. That's why she left the village.
but that kind of jump started her law career, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So that's a little bit of their background story. So why she has it's revealed to Phoenix Wright that Maya reveals to Phoenix Wright that Mia has superior medium skills, but at that point in her life, she had long given it up in order to pursue becoming an attorney, and so she was like not as good at it as Mia was, but she was still obviously training to be one, and so yeah, you're finding that information out too, and you end up the second day of the trial, you end up cross-examining the bellboy and kind of right isn't don't you kind of find out some information from him, or am I crazy?
No, no, you
No,
definitely
you do.
do.
And you actually even before that too, you go back to the Grossberg and you try to get some information from him as well, and he he doesn't really give you anything, but it kind of, I think you're led to believe that he's being blackmailed by somebody, and you find out that April May is the secretary for this super powerful CEO named Mr. Red White, and he's the CEO of a company named Blue Corp. And you end up going to his office to talk to him, and this dude he's a douche. He's a he's very skeezy and just very cocky and self assured of himself, and he's just like, um, what's that, Dante?
Okay, there. Are you getting into this like second investigation?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to backtrack just a small bit.
All
So
right.
you cross-examine April May, and one thing that you noticed when you were in the Gatewater Hotel was that she had a wiretap in her room. And pretty much at the end of the day one trial, you incriminate her on wiretapping, if I recall. Let me,
That sounds right.
yeah. And then you also say, hey, there was another person in the room with you. And that's where the bellboy comes up that Marqus was talking about.
Yeah. And so you're basically asking her about wiretapping, and did you talk to the bellboy, and because he's the one that reveals that um, there was a second person in the room, and now you're trying to figure out who the second person was, and you're trying to get some more background information on April May. So you go to her boss, and he ends up being a dick, and I think he ends up like. I think there is a third day of investigation, isn't there?
No, there's just two.
There's just
Unless
two.
you count like the night that you find Mia's body.
There's, huh? Well, I just remember like that dude. He like ends up punching you. Uh, Red White.
Super rich dude that pretty much can get away with anything. And he's like, oh, I'm above the law. And that's kind of when you start going into the backstory of why Grossberg refuses to do anything about this trial.
And yeah, you find out he's being blackmailed, and you got it from here, Dante.
Yeah, so let me think about the best way to organize this. One thing I do want to say real fast is the bellboy is a great character. He is so excited to give you that affidavit when you go back to him. He's like, "Man, I've been waiting for this like my entire life."
Oh yeah, like he's been like working at that hotel, and he's like, yeah, we're gonna make this room the witness room, the room that saw the murder, and this room is gonna be famous, and we're gonna charge a lot for it. And it's just like, wait, what?
Okay, since you didn't get saw it, you did get Gatewater, right?
I get it. I didn't notice it when I was playing, but I get it.
Okay, okay, cool. So essentially, at some point, you go back to Grossberg, and the first time you go, I think he's not there, but you notice he had this really big painting on the back of his wall, and all of a sudden it's gone, and you're like, huh, why did that happen? So you go through a little bit more of the investigation stuff. You find out some details about essentially what's called the DL6 incident, the incident which Mia and Maya's mother tried to help the police, but then it kind of backfired. You find those files at the law offices. After you do all that stuff, you go back to Grossberg. He kind of explains like, "Oh, I was actually kind of the guy who leaked stuff about your mentor, and this is why all of this happened." And Red White essentially has blackmail on everybody. And then you end up back at Blue Corp, and you present the newspaper clipping that you find about the DL6 incident to Mr. White, and pretty much you accuse him of blackmailing people, and I'm pretty sure that's where he punches you and also tells his security guys to like escort you from the building. And let's see, you go back to the detention center and you pretty much recap what Maya has said up to this point, and then you are brought to the next day in the trial.
Yeah, like, and then at that point, aren't you're investigating, or you're cross-examining Mr. Red then or Red White, right?
Yeah, so can we go into Mr. White's behavior?
That dude is like, he has the best, besides Miles, and the only reason I like Miles more is because you see him more, but this dude goes from like super like flashy, like showing off his rings and his jewelry, then he does like a little chill like shoulder shrug, and then you just see the gleaming of his teeth and all the jewels on him and everything, and all his rings and his jewelry, and I'm like, this dude right here. What'd you think, Trevor?
So, did you catch his introduction?
No, what did he say?
When they asked for his name, he's like, my name is Red White, but my friends call me Blanco Nino. I'm like, oh my god, this man is a pimp.
I
forgot
how
about that.
Is written that it doesn't even have the little tilde over the end.
Oh man, I forgot about that. Yeah, my name is Red White, but my friends call me White Boy. Yeah, but he's a G, and he's like a I think he's been like blackmailing people, so he feels like he's above the law, and I think you end up. I mean, what's the line that you catch him in when you're cross-examining him?
So originally, one thing you did, the one non-lie you find out from April May is that Mia ran to the right, I believe.
That's right,
Is where the exit is.
So you one of your pieces of evidence is a overview of the Mia's office, and you can kind of see where everything was. You can see like where the furniture was at the time of the murder and what the witness would have been able to see from the window. And so she says that, oh, I was, looking from outside across the street or whatever. The witness, she ran right. And then when you testify, or because
this freaking moron.
Yeah,
like, man, I could have sworn she ran to the left.
Yeah, and like he's saying he was the second person that was in the hotel room. So in theory, he should have saw the same exact thing that Miss White saw, or I'm sorry, April May saw, but instead he was the actual killer. So he's saying, no, she didn't run right, she ran left because he's sitting in the room. So that's like the big like. There's no way. It is super cool too, because like you say, like, oh well, you like objection. The April or Miss May, April May said that she ran to the right, and you're saying she ran to the left. I think there's some type of blah 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 here, and then Miles is like, oh well, I mean, what do you think was the cause? And then you could say, you did it, and like, it's super like dramatic and like it's really cool. Like, I don't know, this game is corny and I like it.
It's so funny how he like gets out. Or I guess this is the one of the situations where like I start kind of shaking my head a little bit, where my man's like, well, see, what actually happened was, she ran to the left, then she ran to the right after that. Like come on now.
Dude, it's so
Nah, bro. The
it's like
evidence
real
says she
life.
only got struck once.
Do you feel like this is a good? I mean, maybe playing Phoenix Wright. This would be good for like dealing with little kids when they start lying and they change. I'm just saying, man.
This is preparing me for when my kids get older.
Would you like to
Trevor.
change your testimony?
Hold it.
And you start playing the music. Dun, 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 dun. Oh man, yeah. So it's really, I don't know. I really like when you call somebody on a lie and then they like quickly change their story and say, well, actually, what happened was, and then you have to like call out the lie and the next thing. Then like, no. But for real, what happened was, and like I don't know.
And this guy just has the most rich person type of meltdown too. The look he has when he like slams his fist onto the little table or whatever, and he looks up and he just looks like he's about to cry.
This is not fair. Yeah. So you end up finding out that, or proving that, in actuality, Red White he was the person that was involved with the case years ago, right? With Mia forcing her to retire from the medium world, right?
Yeah, more or less.
And so, like, this is him. This is him getting revenge or revenge on her, I guess.
No, so I guess going back to after the whole running right and left thing, you find out that he admits to wiretapping after Edgeworth coerces him into doing so. Like, Edgeworth is such a cool cat. He's like, hey man, admit your crime. Admit it now. And then he's like, oh yeah, I did wiretap the office, but I'm definitely not a murderer.
Yeah, yep. But nah, he did that shit.
So is there not like some kind of collusion or witness tampering going on? Because I get that vibe from Edgeworth all the time, where he's just like this really shady prosecutor.
By any means.
So essentially, the judge will order a 20-minute recess or whatever, and that gives time for the prosecution and the witness to synchronize their testimony or synchronize their game plan. So normally when that happens, that's when you see like, oh, the witness who was just on the ropes. It's like, oh, I'm cool now. We've sorted this all out. And essentially, Edgeworth's point was, okay, well, he admitted that he was in the office, but he was actually in the office the day before the murder, or no, the week before the murder. You guys following?
Oh yeah,
I think so.
Okay, yeah. So at that point, you have to prove like, okay, we know that White had been in the office, but you can't prove that he was actually there the day of. The reason that his memory is so vivid is because he entered a week ago. Turns out, this also, Marcus, you want to go into the transformation, quote unquote?
You got it, man.
Okay, so Phoenix is pretty much on the ropes, and he's like, man, I don't see any way out of this situation, and this is kind of where the game also puts you in that place where there's literally nothing in the cross-examination that you can actually really protest or object to. So he's starting to have a little bit of a meltdown, and then he hears Mia's voice and blacks out. Then I think he's out for a good like 15, 20 minutes or something. He wakes up, happens again, blacks out. Then he wakes up and is like, wait a second, that's Mia, but it's in Maya's body. So what do you guys think about this?
It's Mia in where Maya is standing wearing Maya's clothes, but it's Mia. So she's like, instead of being a 17-year-old girl, she's a 30-year-old woman or, 28, whatever, however old she is. So she's like a grown-ass woman wearing this medium clothes and talking to him and like everything is normal. I hate it.
Yeah. So does nobody else see this?
I think what
I'm not
it's
sure.
supposed to be depicting is Mia talking. I'm not sure about this. If it's Maya talking from our world to Mia, or if it's Mia talking from the spirit world through Maya. I think it's the latter.
She's literally possessed, and like the physical change actually is a physical change. That's not just Phoenix.
So everybody sees that?
So the court's just gonna act like they don't see a dead woman in the. Okay.
It's kind of funny. It's pretty funny because the judge sometimes he'll be like, something seems different about you.
I mean, she got bigger in the.
You know what? Yeah.
I'm just saying, like she's even taller though, and didn't they have like different color hair? I thought, right?
I think
Mia was a blonde,
had
right?
brown hair, right?
Oh, brown, and Maya has like blue or black.
Yeah, black hair.
Hey man, it's a game. This is part of the fun. This universe is very quirky and kooky, so
it's not realistic
a lot of
enough.
Possessions.
Well, that's like the one. I won't say the one thing, but like it's the. Why is this even like? Because like when this happened, I was like, "What's the point of even killing Mia if I need her to solve this case?" You know, like. But I guess it's kind of redemption for what happened in the backstory, where it's like, oh, like, go ahead.
I was just gonna say this is her finishing the battle against White.
I mean, I get it, but I don't know. It's just kind of like because she pops up again. She pops up again in the next case, and it's just kind of like, what's the point of killing her off if you are going to you need her to solve these cases? And then, like, at the same time, I guess it's a little bit more interesting if you have, like, a super green attorney paired up with his mentor's younger sister who's like, you know, like you can add that spooky or that kookiness, I should say. But I don't know. It's just kind of like, what was the point of getting rid of Mia if you were going to need her anyways?
I mean... It's not like she's around for that long. She's literally around for like a piece.
Sure.
But I get it because it is like the fatality of the trial, I should say. Like it's the climax.
I mean, did you guys feel that way, Trevor or Greg?
Yeah, definitely. Like if they would have made it more like she's channeling her sister, and you can hear her voice in your head or something like that, then I kind of would have I don't know. It may have came off a little bit better, but
the fact that everybody else sees it is even more weird to me now.
And nobody says anything.
Like I thought it was that he is seeing Mia, and then everybody else is seeing Maya. So it's like he's just kind of like, I guess she's kind of channeling Mia through that, but you know, I guess that's like she's the medium, so he's just seeing her through seeing Mia through Maya. But I wasn't, you know, the fact that everybody else sees it is kind of weird, and I kind of agree with you on like what's the point of killing her off if you're just gonna bring her back whenever the plot seems like it, you know, it fits her.
Dante?
I mean, I feel like you guys will have a slightly different opinion if you continue with this game, if you continue with the rest of the series. But yeah, I can definitely understand how it's a little bit jarring, especially because it kind of feels like a kill steal the first time, because you're like, man, I'm taking on Edgeworth, I might have this. But it also kind of makes sense that you wouldn't be ready for like an Edgeworth tier opponent.
You're right. And like I get it in the sense of it's her redemption against this red white guy because of all the that incident that happened, you know, in the past.
Let's just clear up the rest of like case 2, where essentially you find out that when you turn the receipt over, it shows that the lamp involved with the murder was purchased the day before, and he testified about the lamp, so you know he was in there literally the day before or the day of. And Somehow he even gets off the hook from that. And pretty much that's where Maya's just like, hey, hand me a sheet of paper and write some stuff, hands it to Phoenix Wright. He starts listing off names. Turns out they were names of people that Red White had blackmailed, and pretty much he confesses at that point.
Must be nice, because it was really weird because he testified and said, yeah, I personally planted the wiretap, and when I was in there, I planted it this day, and I saw this lamp, and then the receipt on her hand that she was holding in her hand when she died, it said, oh, this lamp was purchased on this day, which was like later than when he supposedly planted the wiretap. So it's very crazy that he got off of that, and then it wasn't until she used her spirit powers or whatever, and like he said, wrote down names, that he kind of confessed to his guilt. And then so you absolved Maya of the crime, and she was found not guilty. And finally, you guys, I think the way it ends is you guys are it's now I don't remember what the original name was called. I want to say Fay & Co. Law Offices, and it gets renamed to Wright & Co. Law Offices. Maya decides to stick around as your assistant to help you out. And I guess Mia appears again through Maya and says she'll be keeping tabs on you and watching you, right?
Something to that effect, I remember her saying that, yeah.
And yeah,
yeah, so they have like a group hug-ish thing or a high five.
And so that's how that chapter ends, or that case ends. And going into the final case that we played, case 3, I think that starts off with a battle between two samurais, and they are, sword fighting or whatever, and one fatally stabs the other in the chest and kills him, and that's kind of where you start off, just trying to figure out. I think it even starts off too. The beginning of that case, you and Maya are talking and saying like, we are kind of broke. Where are we going to find our next case? And then here comes this case.
They were actually that was actually the TV show that they were showing. I don't think that was the actual murder that they showed.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so the Steel Samurai is like this syndicated TV show in the Phoenix Wright universe, and all the kids are into it. Maya's into it, and she's like, oh man, look at him finish off the evil magistrate with his finishing blow. And Nick's just like the old man in the room, like, what are all these kids into? This is such
Wait, who's
show.
Nick?
That is Phoenix Wright's nickname given to him by Maya.
I thought Larry called him Nick too.
Yeah, I guess it's like
right.
his friendly nickname.
Childhood name?
Yeah.
Oh man, I just got that.
Phoenix? Nick?
No, nickname.
Oh.
Name. I might be reaching with that one.
Bars. So this case, how we want to talk about this third case, because this is a long case. This is a 3-day case. Basically, you guys start off and you and Maya, and you're kind of saying like, oh no, like, it's been kind of dead, like, no pun, but it's been kind of like not busy in our offices for the past couple of weeks. How are we going to be able to afford to pay the bills? And then this guy comes up and, Maya calls you and she says that Will Powers, the actor who plays the character Steel Samurai from that super popular TV show, has been arrested for murder. And she's a huge fan of his, so she wants you guys to defend him. And the victim, Will Powers, is found guilty, or he's accused of impaling the victim, Jack Hammer, a.k.a. the evil magistrate, who is the villain in the TV show. with the samurai spear, which is the spear that the steel samurai uses, and or a spear that he uses in the show. So you go down to the detention center and interview Will Powers to kind of get a feel for what he's feeling, and he seems like ultimately like a good guy, but he's just kind of like, man, I don't know, like almost like a more confident, almost like or at least physically imposing version of Larry Butts. But they seem like very similar characters, where they're both like kind of wrong place, wrong time, and they don't necessarily have like you believe them, but they don't necessarily have any like, well, it couldn't have been me because of all these things. It's just kind of like, oh well, I was asleep, therefore I couldn't have done it. And so it's up to you to kind of build the case for why he couldn't have done it. And it's actually kind of, this is a little bit annoying, but also it kind of grew on me. But Maya, being such a huge fan of the Steel Samurai show, anytime you are, actually really throughout this entire case, she's fangirling over Steel Samurai. So anytime you're on the set, she's super excited when you're talking with Will Powers. She's just fangirling the whole time, and she's kind of like, he didn't do it. No way he could have done it. You know, blah blah this, blah blah that.
At first, though, the first reaction she has to that man, because he never showed himself to the public to keep like the kid's reputation pure or whatever. When you walk into that detention center and you see him, the first words out of her mouth are, "He definitely did it. He's guilty."
I mean, he's a physically imposing man, so I mean, he looks like a lion almost. Like the dude, he's like super muscular guy. He has like these thick sideburns and like yeah, he looks like he has like a lion mane almost.
Yeah, he looks like a lion, but he acts like a lamb.
He's almost like the Cowardly Lion from Wizard of Oz, or not?
I can see it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. But so you end up having you're in the investigation mode, so you have to like build a case for why he couldn't have done it. So you head over to the movie studio or the where the TV show is filmed, and you meet Miss Old. What is her name? Miss Oldbag.
Oh, okay. I was about to say
Miss Wendy Oldbag. She's this super old security guard, and she's like, she gets. How do you describe this woman? Like she
chatty.
Actually, yeah. It's super interesting. So like when you talk to people, you kind of like their text shows up, and you have to tap the screen in order to go until the next bar of dialogue, so that way the game gives you time to read everything that's said. But they play to great effect at this point. When she's talking to you, it's just like she's talking and talking and talking, and it's like almost like a run-on sentence in the fact that there's no pause, and it's the dialogue scrolls just fast enough that I don't get to read the entire thing before new text pops up and replaces the old text. So it's like this lady is talking, and I actually thought my game was messing up for a second, because I was like, holy crap, like I'm not catching all this information. And then like afterwards, like your characters kind of mention like, oh, she's quite chatty, isn't she? And that's when I realized, oh, like that's just her character. And like that was just another point where it was almost like the game, the developers do a good job of like adding character to this character by doing that little subtle thing where I was just like, I'm thinking it's a mistake, but then they're like, oh, we can't really we can't make her talk fast, but we can have this text scroll by really quickly, and that will give that same effect. And the player is going to have a very similar reaction to the characters in the game of like, oh, she talks a lot.
It's also funny because like when you're reading it, she's saying something really funny, but then it cuts off like right before you get to the punchline most of the time. And they just do a really good job with the writing.
Yeah, yeah. Enough cannot be said about the writing in this game. It's superb. And yeah, so then you start exploring the studio, and so you meet a stagehand named Penny Nichols, and she's like an intern almost. She seems kind of like a youngish girl, like early 20s, and she kind of gives you a lot of the background, saying like, oh, well, they rehearsed a fight scene. The two actors rehearsed a fight scene today, and nobody was there. And then I saw Will go to his trailer and blah blah blah. So that kind of backs up the fact that, oh, well, Will said that he was asleep for 3 hours, 4 hours in his trailer, and this person literally saw him go into his trailer, so maybe he couldn't have been lying or whatever. And you you talk to I think you go back and talk to the security lady, and she's gone, and you end up finding a photograph that supposedly during this this fight rehearsal, the actor Will Powers, he injured his ankle, so he kind of had a limp ankle, and so that's why he went to go to sleep after lunch, was to rest his ankle for filming later on in the day. And so later on you find a photograph of a person dressed up as the Steel Samurai, Will's character, and he's walking through the gate. They have a gate that has a camera that automatically takes pictures of anybody that passes through it, and the person has a limp ankle. So it's like not looking too good for the defendant. It looks like, oh, well, all the signs point towards him being the guilty one. So what goes on in the trial then, Dante? Do you remember?
Yeah, so let me get all of this sorted.
I think you're cross-examining Old Bag.
Old Bag first, and it's pretty funny because Edgeworth is a prosecutor, and she kind of has a crush on Edgeworth, I guess would be the best way to describe it. So
she definitely has a crush on Jack Hammer.
Yeah, she does, but then like when you get into the trial and stuff, she's like edgy poo, and start talking to him, and that's kind of when he gets flustered. Is this kind of where you were talking about where Edgeworth's animations get really...
No, later on.
Okay, cool. But essentially you're cross-examining her, and she keeps claiming that she saw Powers going through the gate at 2 or 2:30, whatever time it was. You contradict her, and you're like, it wasn't Powers necessarily, it was the Steel Samurai. And, let's see. Have you found out at this point that the spear was broken during the rehearsal?
I think so. You find out that it was broken, and because what's her name says she has to repair it.
Yeah, Old Bag tells you that she has to repair the murder weapon, essentially the samurai spear. So you get a little bit more information there. And yet again, I think she's really insistent on Powers being the one in the photo, even though there's really no proof of it. And this is where she starts getting into, oh, there might have been another person, or I sensed another person.
I don't know if it was her, but I think the evidence against it was like every day when somebody there's new sets of photos that are taken every day when somebody goes by that gate. And so the only photo she had of that day was the photo of the Steel Samurai, yet it was labeled number 2. So it was the second photo taken that day, but it was the only one on the computer. So therefore, the initial one had gotten erased. So she said that only one person had gotten to this place, but in actuality, there was at least 2 people because there was a photo taken before. They just didn't have evidence of the photo. So then I think the judge calls for a recess so that way both sides can consider the information and they could kind of
I also
regain
just want to
their
say
composure.
everybody is really upset with Old Bag at this point. She just consistently proves herself as like this incompetent old lady that does like she half remembers a lot of stuff.
Yep.
And like even the judge is like, "Man, I'm old, but I don't have time for this."
But yeah, you end up Wright kind of basically says, Will Powers didn't do it, but we should check into this old bag lady as being a potential suspect because she has no alibi, and she was one of the few people that knew about Powers' injury. So therefore, if she was the one wearing the Steel Samurai suit, she would have been able to faithfully act like she had a limp ankle. And I don't think Edgeworth objected to that, so I think she ended up being. Go ahead, Dante.
I was just gonna say Edgeworth let her out to dry.
Yeah, he let her out to dry, and so even though she was like a super huge fan of Jackhammer, it didn't matter, and so she basically was also put on as being a potential suspect. So she was also put into holding, which, but then because she was upset, she kind of let out that she's been told to hide the fact that there were other people in the studio, mostly the director and the producer. And so that everybody at the studio was saying, oh, the only people there was the assistant and, the two actors. But in actuality, there was way more people there. And so she lets that out, and then basically court convenes, and basically it's like, we need to gather some more information because now we know about this finding. We need to figure out who was there and what they saw. And that's when I think that ends the day one trial. And then so day two is you going back to the studio and basically Old Bag having a 180, like she was super chatty and everything. Day one, day two, she wanted nothing to do with you. She was like super grumpy and grouchy. Trevor, how'd you like Old Bag day two?
Man, so Old Bag, like I said, she got on my nerves too. And it felt like you had to deal with her the most out of any other character in the game. At least outside of like the courtroom. But the thing about this case, it was basically like everything up to that point where it's just like, oh, there were other people at the studio. Kind of, it makes everything before that seem like it just didn't matter. Like it was just a waste of time. And then I guess we're going to get to we've already gotten to the camera part, haven't we? Where the camera that's at the studios automatically takes a picture of whoever walks by.
Yeah, it was brought up in the first.
Yeah, so how did the camera not catch anybody else?
I think what was said was
it was closed.
I think when the lady is not working the security desk, I think she goes to work at noon. So anybody that goes in before then, they don't have their pictures taken.
Man,
I think is what it was.
That's a lot of oversight right there.
Right?
Well, I think also has it been revealed that the monkey was blocking the one, studio?
Yeah, that's revealed like the first time you go to the studio, and I think Gumshoe is the one who reveals that to you.
Yeah, so I think that kind of impacted the traffic through that area.
Isn't it Vasquez that said something about that, or am I thinking? I might have the name wrong, but
I think
she's a little bit further. Like she's in the
day two
investigation.
Man, this game it's hard to talk about this game, dude. Yeah, so you go back and you're talking to Old Bag, and she doesn't want no parts to do with you. So you kind of just look around the studio, and you run into this dude that talks elite speak, and I think he has like the coolest name. one of the cooler names. His name is Sal Manella, and he's the director of Steel Samurai, and he's just like super nerdy looking, like look, think of the comic book guy from Simpsons. Thank you. I couldn't think of it. He's like acne. He's kind of overweight. Glasses and like super nerdy. Talks in like internet speak. Um, and he kind of gives you a little information. He actually has a really cool theme. He's like the only theme in this game that I remember. I liked his theme, character theme, anyways. And then you end up meeting a little kid, and there's supposedly a grate at little fans sneak into the thing and sneak onto the lot, and Old Bag has to chase him away. And so there's this kid Cody who he's a diehard Steel Samurai fan, and he always like takes pictures, and he admitted that he had saw something, but he was not willing to tell you what, and he ends up running off before you get more information from him. What's up, Dante?
No, I was about to jump the gun again. My bad.
Objection. I mean, hold it. But yeah, you walk around some more, and you run into Dee Vasquez, who's the producer of Steel Samurai, and so she seems. I think she's like the most apathetic, like doesn't care about anything you got to say of anybody in this game so far. Like she just wants nothing to do with you, and like doesn't like give you any help or like answers. So she wants you to do something for her, and you're supposed to like get something from the director for her, and I don't know. It's there's a lot of running around in this part of the case, and I'll be honest with you, like I ultimately liked where this case ended up, but like the moving around and like during the investigation parts of this case, like I did not like at all. It seemed more like a chore, and that was like one of the times, especially I guess because of the way this lot was set up, where it's like there was a map of this lot, and so you could go from one room to the next room, but you could only go to like the quote unquote like the next room, the connecting room. So you couldn't like fast travel from the entrance to the far back room. You had to go to like the two rooms before that before you get to the back room. So getting around here was like not fun for me. Trevor, I'm gonna go kick it to you first, then Greg.
Yeah, that was one thing I was gonna say was investigation, like just moving around this area was a huge burden simply because you couldn't go from like the gate all the way to the employee area, or not the employee area, but the dressing room. You had to kind of move through it like you would like a dungeon crawl type game. And that just made it a huge burden. I didn't mind like the fetch quest thing and like the trading and all that. That was all right. I could see that getting a lot deeper, like in other games or in other cases. But yeah, the traveling during the investigation just became a huge burden.
Greg?
You guys kind of just mirrored everything that I was going to say. It's just kind of, it got a little tedious after a while. And I guess I kind of get why it's set up that way, but it just kind of, it feels like, and it makes that particular part of the chapter feel like unnecessarily long. Just because you end up spending a lot of time going to one area, doing one thing there, then having to backtrack to three different areas just to get to the one place you originally need to get to. So just kind of like it kind of, I don't know, I guess it makes that part of the game just drag on.
Dante, you got anything? I mean,
pretty much what you guys mirrored. Like, I think that case in particular has that issue just with the way the studio's set up.
yeah.
And I guess it was, I don't know if it was intentional. I don't want to say it was intentional that they made it so you had to jump from this very specific location to the next location to the next location. Like when you have to deliver that thing to Salmonella from Devask, you literally have to go all the way across the map, which is like 4 or 5 moves. But thankfully, I don't think that happens too often in the other cases. So I think this is as worse as it gets.
Yeah, I mean, like, it was, like, kind of what Greg said, like, and even Trevor, like, doing certain tasks when you know you had to go somewhere, I mean, it kind of was just monotonous and just was like, damn, like, I just want to be able to go to the dressing room. I don't want to have to, like, do the 2 or 3 steps before it. But, like, when you were, like, and I think it was mostly, for me, the most frustrating part was when I was, like, not sure what my next move was. So, like, I did, I just I had to find the director, and he just so happened to be in the dressing room. But like I was just like moving to different locations trying to find him, and then like I looked at 5 or 6 places before I got to the dressing room, and then that was the more annoying part. Was like, okay, I know I need to trigger something to happen to progress the story, but I need to get to whatever area it is to trigger that.
I was just going to quickly ask if anybody got stuck at any point.
I felt like I did. I don't remember if it was this part, but it was just I'm trying to think what happened. I just remember like, okay, I've talked to everybody. What next? Oh yeah, it was So at this part, there's that grate that was broken the first day that the little kid crawled in from. So the second day, you talk to what's her name? I want to say April. But
Penny.
That doesn't sound right. Penny. You talk to Penny, and she re-put the grate on the hole so nobody could come in, and then so I walked around trying to trigger the next thing, and I walked around for maybe, I don't know, I went to a lot of locations twice, and I'm like, nothing's happening. I'm not getting any new dialogue with any of these people, and so I went back to that place, and when I first was there, as soon as I talked to Penny, she put it up, then she leaves, then Maya's like, you want to take that thing down? And I'm like, no, like, she just put it up. And so when I get back there, I'm like, oh, I guess this is the only other thing I can do, so let's pull it down. And pull it down, and then nothing happens, and I'm like, okay, cool. So, like, I moved around some more trying to see if, like, I went to the other places to see if anything changed, and then nothing changed, so then I go back to that spot, and then I see the kid then, and then it's like, oh, okay, so did I move an X amount of turns, or, like, I don't know. It was just, like, kind of annoying, because it was just like, what do I do? What do I do? Did you run into anything like that, Trevor?
No, I didn't really have any parts where I got stuck. The other thing I was going to add that was kind of annoying about moving around was that each day that you travel around the lot, it always gives you like the date and time, like once you move to that location, and it does it for every single room that you move into. And I'm wondering if that's going to be significant in one of the future cases. But right now it's just really annoying when you're just trying to, when you know which room you have to go to, and you have to travel all the way there and wait for all, the little text to scroll through.
So, for, at least on my version, it only does that if there's a change to the room. Like, if something triggered, then you get the whole, like, I re-entered this area and this is the day and time. But if I'm just moving, that doesn't
No, it does that whenever you re-enter a room, like the next day, like if you visited that room on day one.
Yeah, like if you revisit a room and there's something a script essentially that triggered, then yeah, there's gonna be an update.
Sometimes the rooms were like empty. Like I know a couple of times where you go through the employee area. Like sometimes that room would be empty, nobody would be in there until after you went to the dressing room and then came back out. But you would still have to sit through the date and time.
I get what you're saying now. So like, if there's a trial in between, yeah, then
Right.
every room essentially refreshes at least once.
It was lame. um, but yeah. So you get you get some stuff for the director. You meet the director, meet the producer, and you talk to them some. And I think at this point, um, you learn from. I think Penny like mentions something about some incident that happened 5 years ago, and then she kind of says like, "Well, I don't know much about it. Talk to Old Bag." And you end up talking to Old Bag, and she immediately defends Hammer once you mention the accident, and at that point, you kind of like, oh, so there was some incident, and he's indebted to Vasquez, the producer, D. Vasquez. So now you know there's something shady going on with D, and then I think you bring it up to her, or maybe you hold on to that. I actually don't remember if it's. I know it's something happens later on, but I don't know. Right, Dante? It's the day 3 that you talk to her. Oh no.
Sorry, it wouldn't let me unmute for a second. But yeah, I think you're done with Devask at this point. So going off what you said, you get you give Old Bag the card so she can essentially quote unquote visit Hammer, and then that triggers fetch quest that Trevor was talking about. So you end up talking with Cody. Cody gives you his, I think it's like Way of the Samurai or
He gives you some like trading card.
Path to Glory, and that's his little book where he has all of the finishing blows from the Steel Samurai series.
I forgot about that. Keep going, man. You got it. Keep going. Oh, fine. Leave me to do it. Okay.
I think he forgot to take himself off mute because I hear him in the other room.
There's a lag to it. But anyway, you get to day 3 trial where you investigate, cross-examine Cody, the little kid. And it's pretty funny because they have to put him on this little, like...
Stool.
What do you call him? Like, yeah, stool pretty much. Just so he can, like, see above the stand.
He's like 8 or 10 or something like that, right?
Yeah, he's a second grader.
This is my part that I was talking about, though, because you have to you and Miles are cross-examining him, and the judge is kind of... Huh?
I skipped ahead a little bit. This is where you cross-examine Salmonella first.
Oh.
But I don't know if he had anything really interesting to say.
I don't think so. I think it kind of just points out that there was more than one person, or I think this is just to prove that there was more than...
It was more of like the time window. Like they took a 15-minute break during their meeting.
And those steaks.
He didn't eat. And he didn't eat, right?
Nah, he ate. He looks like he
ate.
He looks like he could finish a steak in 15 minutes.
Oh man, that steak thing.
But yeah. Basically, he basically tries to make it seem like they worked the entire time. They had there was the rehearsal that the directors and the producer sat in on between the two actors. Then after that, the director and the producer went to a meeting in a different section of the studio, and he tried to make it seem like they were there the whole time and they didn't take a break. But you find out that they did take a break, and they also ate as well. So he proved to be like a not trustworthy witness, and I think
pretty much this is the part where Mr. Monkey's head became a big point of contention, and Edgeworth kind of calls Wright out on accusing Sal at this point, because like he was stuck at Studio 2 and he couldn't have gotten to where the murder allegedly happened. So at this point, Wright calls Cody to the stand, I think. Is that right, Marqus?
Yeah, we'll go with it.
Okay.
And then
So,
I'm pretty sure it's day 3. Cody's on the stand. No, actually, no. This is day 2. Yeah, so Cody's on the stand day 2, and he basically,
he's too afraid to admit that the Steel Samurai lost.
His hero lost, yeah. But like
at first he makes it sound like, oh yeah, the murder went through exactly like everybody had described, but then it's like, why didn't you take a picture of the finishing blow?
You always do. And the thing that I did appreciate or whatever, because he's written very immaturely, as a kid would be. And it was funny because the judge kind of says that, hey, I need you guys to take it lightly. Like, he doesn't know that he actually potentially saw an actual murder. He thought he saw like they were just acting. So yeah, be careful with the words you use around him and just like the language you use. And it's funny because, I mean, Phoenix Wright does a good job of it, but when Miles says anything, he kind of just blows Miles up and just kind of like disrespects them in the way only a kid can, and Miles can't take it. And that was the part that I was talking about, where Miles just kind of his reactions when the kid is like telling him off and snapping back at him is super funny.
The other funny thing about this part is, so Cody doesn't really like Phoenix Wright at all, but he, whenever Maya transforms into Mia, he gets like super complacent and like agreeable.
I don't blame him.
And I think Mia is with you at this part in the trial, if I remember.
Yeah, like, so in case 2, she showed up just at the end, but I'm pretty sure in case 3, she's pretty much there from the end of day 2 all the way to the end of the trial. Pretty sure.
No, she's not there the last day.
Oh.
Because Maya runs out of spirit medium juice at the end of day 2 trial.
Okay. But yeah, you pretty much realize, oh, like the boy says it went down this way, but it actually didn't go down this way, right? So I don't remember like what happens.
My bad. Like, the mute button keeps going on and off. But pretty much Cody reveals that he did take a photo, if I recall. And
it was a photo of this. It was a photo of the Steel Samurai outside of Studio 2.
That's right.
And so
that was one of the things, you couldn't easily see the 2 just because it was cut off.
Yeah, so
and
like
that also flipped the case on its,
Yeah, because the body was found in Studio 1 and Studio 2 was supposedly in disrepair, but it ended up being, oh, well, the Steel Samurai actually went to Studio 2, so what's going on?
And you also find out that Jack Hammer allegedly gave sleeping medicine to Will Powers.
Yep.
Via planting it in a steak.
In his steak, yep.
So
yeah, basically the end of day 2, you're tasked with like, okay, so what was he doing at Studio 2? Who, because you accuse him of putting sleeping pills in Will's food, but you don't know why, and you don't know if he actually did it, so they have to run like DNA tests on it. And then on top of that, you need to see, who it was in that suit if it wasn't Will. Because you're not sure if it was, what's his name yet? Jack Hammer. And then basically, at this point, you just go to Dee and you talk to her and you get more dirt on her and talk to Will. So actually, you talk to Will first to find some background on the director and the producer and Hammer, and he kind of tells you that he kind of says that Jack Hammer was the star 5 years ago. Some incident happened, and he no
He
longer
fell
he's
from glory.
yeah, he's indebted to Vasquez, so it's like, oh, there's another blackmail situation. So then you know, go talk to Vasquez, and she pretty much has her goons strong arm you when you show her this picture of like why you think that she did it, and her goons are about to strong arm you, and then
Like
detective,
she's part of the mafia.
yeah, and Detective Gumshoe pops in last minute to arrest Vasquez, and so basically you go into that third day as she's the witness or whatever. You're cross examining her statements, and going into this third
You
day.
also, sorry, just one quick thing. You talked to Old Bag at one point, and she has a photo of the incident that occurred 5 years, very conveniently.
Yeah, yeah, she has a picture of like the end result, which is some actor got knocked off of some place in Studio 2 and impaled on the fence by Will Powers. It was an accident, but that's the incident that they're referring to. So day three, your trial, you're cross-examining Vasquez, and she's just being her normal, like, super slimy self and just, like, dodging all the questions you're asking and not giving, like, full, true answers. And I think you kind of, at a certain point, and I think, Dante, you said this part was going to be the part that got us stuck.
So, the part that I thought everybody was going to get stuck at was in the previous trial. There's a specific part in Salmonella's thing where you have to press them on one thing, and then you immediately have to press them on something else. And I've gotten stuck there once or twice when I've played through the game, but I guess none of you ran into that issue. But I do think this next section is, I don't even want to call it hard, I just don't think it's great how they did it with the T-bone steak.
Yeah, I messed up at this part, so I actually failed at this part because I got to a part where I was stuck in this investigation or the trial, and I kept presenting evidence that had nothing to do. I had to prove some type of fallacy in one of the statements she was making, but I didn't know what piece of evidence it was. Like I knew what I wanted to say as the person, but I didn't have the information that I could present in the game. So like if I was Phoenix Wright, I'd be like, well, what about this thing? But the only way you can object or present an argument or a counter argument is by it being backed up by a piece of evidence. And I didn't like, there was no evidence tied to the statement that I wanted to make. So I was just like, oh, let me present this, let me present this. And I presented 5 different but incorrect pieces of evidence. And I failed, and I hadn't saved up to that point. So I had to start the entire trial over. And I was like, 6 parts deep in at that point, so it's a little annoying, but I was able to get back to where I was at within 5 minutes. Did you run into something similar like that, Trevor?
Yeah, but it was more so along the lines of me trying to present the wrong evidence for the wrong statement. So, like, I knew what I needed to present, but I was presenting it during the wrong part of their statement, and that was where I was getting marks off.
Did you have any issues with that, Greg, at all?
In this section, not in particular. There was, I think, maybe one other time earlier in the second case where there was a few times where I thought I had presented the right information for the right statement, but I didn't. But I didn't run into too many issues on this one. I may have like failed or given the wrong answer like once or twice, but didn't really have like too big an issue.
Dante?
Yeah, so I managed to mess up a couple times, and it's kind of funny since I've played through this game. I think this is probably my 4th playthrough.
Whoa, you played through a game more than once?
Hey man, when it's a good game.
I just want to give you crap. Go ahead, man.
But yeah, I don't know why, but I didn't think the T-bone steak thing was the right answer just because the statement, Sal and I ate T-bone steaks on the table in front of the trailer. you have a T-bone steak in your inventory, but it's associated with the
Something
sleeping
else.
medicine. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't think it was the right evidence for that time.
It was so frustrating. Yeah, because like it was so frustrating because you go to the where the actors were at, and they had T-bone steaks and they had bones on their plates, right? And then you go to the other studio and where the director and the producer ate, and they supposedly had T-bone steaks, but there was no bones on their plates. So it just felt really weird to present like a T-bone steak from a different location as evidence.
And if you didn't remember that tidbit from the investigation phase,
Yeah,
there's really no way you
that
could
was
have
that was a part
surmised
that was a part I was referring to too. This was another one where it was like I don't remember what they said they ate. So like, because I didn't necessarily play this whole case in a day or so. I think I played it over the course of like 3 or 4 days. So I had forgot a little piece of that tidbit of information.
And I don't know if this is something they fixed in the later games or it's a part of this game I don't remember. But sometimes when you're cross-examining a witness, you'll occasionally see like pictures instead of just having the generic court background. And that's normally to provide like a context clue of what you're supposed to be seeing. So at least in the latter Ace Attorney games, they would have had a picture of Studio 2 and you would have seen the pictures of the plates.
Gotcha.
And
Yeah, they don't have that for this.
Yeah.
Trevor, you got something you want to say?
One thing that I wish was more prevalent was like when you're in investigation mode and you can actually look at the environment. Like some of the stuff that you bring up during the trials, I noticed like just looking around the environment. Like when I saw that they had the T-bone steaks on the plates in the employee area, I was like, okay, everybody here had T-bone steaks. And then once you get to Studio 2 and you look at the plates and you're just like, wait a minute, somebody didn't have a T-bone steak. Were they eating pizza? Where were they? And so some of that stuff, it seems like, I don't know, to me it would have been better if that would have been something you could have taken note of and brought up during the trials.
Some way to bring it up, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like something as the player that was off, but you don't know how to present it as Phoenix Wright.
Yeah, like when I first went to Studio 2, one of the first things I noticed was one of those, like in the flower bed, like one of the little spikes that's coming out of the ground. I noticed one of them was crooked. And of course that becomes more important like later in the trial. But it's not something where you can tell Detective Gumshoe, who apparently is not doing his job, like, hey, you might want to take a look at this, test it for, dried blood or something on it. I don't know. It just seems like there should be more emphasis put on the investigation, like being able to find stuff in the environment.
Yeah. Or like tire marks where the van was, or because it made it seem like the van hadn't been driven in a while. And they literally used that.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, so like when you investigate it, it's like, oh, this, an old studio van, and then it's like, oh, well, are there tire marks, or like, because it was used in this case or whatever. But you end up cross-examining Vasquez, and I think ultimately you get...
Also, Vasquez wants nothing to do with Edgeworth.
Yeah.
Like, let me handle this, you fool.
Yeah, she kind of downplays the needing Edgeworth's help, and then it becomes a tag team. Or like Edgeworth ends up joining your side, and it's super crazy because he seems like he objects because like it looks like at a certain point it looks like, I think they call it the battle of the wits. It's between you and Vasquez, and it seems like Vasquez has you beat, and then you see objection, and I'm thinking like, wait a minute, I didn't object to anything, and then it ends up being from Edgeworth, and then he ends up joining your side, and like he even has some moments where he just objects for the sake of objecting. He's like, oh, I thought I was gonna have something to say after this.
That moment was so good. He's like, objection. I thought I'd have something. Objection.
Yeah, and like it's super like it makes me like the character even more. But it's also kind of like what Dante says too. Is like so far. I mean, this is the third case. You don't beat Edgeworth. You know, it's like case one. You don't. It's you versus somebody else. Case two. It's like it's Mia that, like you said, kill steals the win for you, and then in case three, he kind of helps you out, you know? So at no point, like you've won, I mean, you end up winning these first three cases, but at no point do you actually beat Edgeworth. So he's like, you know, he ends up helping you out, and you guys got to prove that, oh, well, the Jack Hammer drugged Will Powers so he could steal the Steel Samurai suit, and he pretended like he had a limp leg, so he was posing as Will Powers, and he went to Studio 2 to confront Vasquez for the blackmail that's been going on for the past 5 years, and she ends up killing him by pushing him off the stairs onto the railing, just like the accidental death that she was blackmailing him for. And I guess she, in collusion with Sal Manila, the director, they take the van and drive the body over to Studio One and drop it off and dress it in his normal clothes, so instead of the Steel Samurai costume, so that it looks like
They also
like they
incinerate they incinerate the Steel Samurai costume.
Yeah. So like they basically, because they basically try to blackmail, or he tries to call her out on blackmail. She kills him and sets up Will Powers to look like he was the one that killed Jack Hammer, and so you end up absolving. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's a little messed up because Will Powers essentially gets framed for crimes twice in a single trial. Like Hammer was going to frame him for.
Oh yeah, you're right.
And then immediately after, it's like, oh man, this guy tried to kill me. Let me try to frame it on the same guy that my killer was about to frame it on.
Yeah. Yeah. So you end up getting Powers off, and he's found not guilty. And it's funny because afterwards you go to the lobby, and Powers is shocked that Hammers wanted to frame him. So he kind of asks Wright why he wanted to do it, and he was kind of like, well, Hammer was just jealous that you were a big star because he used to be, and it made him seem more endearing because Powers was like, well, if you had a problem with me being the star, we could have switched places because I respected him a lot. So it was just kind of like, damn, this person he respected, like, he would have done whatever for this person, and this person almost set him up, to be the fall guy for a murder. And afterwards, Maya, she congratulates Will for his verdict, and Edgeworth appears and quickly interrupts, and Phoenix Wright thanks Edgeworth for helping him, and then they had some kind of weird interaction. Can you explain this, Dante?
Yeah, it's kind of starting to allude to the fact that they knew each other before Case 2. And Maya kind of picks up on that. She's like, you guys know each other? And you kind of get this weird interaction, like these old friends that haven't spoken to each other in a long time.
It seemed like it went deeper than that to me, like some kind of unrequited love.
That's what I was thinking. Some thuggin' love.
This ain't no dream, daddy.
But yeah, so so far, I mean, that's caught us up to speed as far as the three cases. I think Dante had requested that we all at least start up case 4 and get the
just the intro video.
The intro. Did you guys check that out, Trevor and Greg? Because I did.
Yeah, I watched it.
I didn't. I forgot about that.
All right. Well, we're gonna.
But I could go look it up on YouTube.
I mean, we'll spoil it real quick.
Okay.
So, like, I think I just watched it before we started this, but I think the way it starts off is these two figures are standing on this boat, or you know, in the middle of this body of water, and I don't remember that they're talking about something, and it's almost like it's trying to make it seem like wait, here it goes. It's okay, so here's the dialogue. It's been what, 15 years? About that, yes. 15 years is a long time to wait. You can't imagine how much I've suffered. You suffered? And now the perfect opportunity presents itself. After 15 years of waiting, I shall have my revenge. What? And then it pans over and it says, Merry Christmas. And then it's a gun and it just fires. And then you find out, so then you see this, because it's these two figures, and you see one of them falls into the lake. And you see who fires the gun, and it's none other than, go ahead, Dante.
Miles Edgeworth.
Yeah. So Miles is going to be, I'm guessing, the defendant, and you're going to have to prove Miles' innocence. But that ending, we're just like, what? Merry Christmas. Shoots him. Trevor, you hyped?
Yeah, man, that last scene had him on there looking like Mr. Jefferson.
Oh yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. So this is my favorite character, so I want to see what's going on with him. And actually, one other thing we didn't point out, this is the last case in the original game, right, Dante?
Yes, so originally this was a Game Boy Advance game, and it had 4 cases. When it got moved over to the DS, they made an additional case 5, that kind of, I don't want to say it links directly to the 4th game, but it kind of starts bridging that gap.
So what's the through line for like some of the characters are basically, I know Phoenix Wright and maybe Mia are like recurring characters.
Those two.
I'm guessing the Judge and Gumshoe.
Judge. Gumshoe is mostly original trilogy. He appears sometimes in the other games, but as far as recurring characters, it's primarily Nick, Maya, and Edgeworth, and the Judge.
Gotcha. Do we got anything else we need to cover as far as what you guys hope for these last 2 cases? I'm hoping that I mean, we already know that Phoenix is gonna help out Miles. Miles ain't going to prison. We know that. So I'm hoping that I get to see some more. I'm looking forward to seeing some more faces for Miles. Some more emojis, meme-worthy faces.
I haven't looked, but I'm pretty sure there's got to be plenty of gifs of the characters from this game.
Definitely.
Oh, definitely. They actually have a website where you can have somebody yell objection from the game, and you can type in your own custom text. It's really good.
Of course they would. Well, anything else we need to cover?
I would highly recommend getting started on these cases quickly, because Case 4 is at least as long as Case 3, and then Case 5, which personally I'm not a huge fan of, but it's alright. I think that one might be slightly longer than 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can do. Alright, well, that is it for the first part of Phoenix Wright. We will be covering the second half, so Case 4 and 5, on the next episode. Do we have any questions, Greg?
I just checked it. No, we don't.
Dang,
but
of course not.
Again, if you guys want to get involved with the show or share thoughts or talk about what we are playing for the week, you can hit us up at misscheckpoints@gmail.com.
And where can people find you, Greg?
I am all over the internet. You guys can find me on Twitter at Boombox Hero, Facebook same way, Boombox Hero, and on Twitch at twitch.tv/xdrdmagnegrox.
Where can people find you, Trevor?
You can find me in Wakanda. You can find me online, Lyric Unsung.
Okay. Where can people find you, Dante?
They literally can't right now.
No
They
internet.
literally don't have internet.
Shout outs to Trevor for being able to house you for the show.
Yes, thank you, Trevor, for accommodating me in this trying time.
And you can find me in the breach. That's where I'll be at. So, and one last thing. For the month of May, we are going to be doing another fan-selected that's going to be another fan-selected month. So we are now taking submissions for games that you guys would like us to play for the month of May. So I think right now we have a handful of games that people submitted. We're going to be trying to get some more. We're going to try to get some more. So
What recs we got?
Off the top of my head, the only ones I remember is the campaign of Dragon Ball Fighter Z, Subnautica, and there was 2 other games, but I think one was over the 20-hour limit. Basically, the only requirement is ideally it's a game that at least didn't come out this year or in the last 12 months, but that's fine. It could be a new game, but the main requirement is it's just no longer than 20 hours. But other than that, it's fair game, and we're doing new submissions. So like even though we have 40 submissions, 50 submissions for December, we're not taking any of those into consideration. You can resubmit some of those games, but we are doing a completely new list, so
Don't expect us to play a game again.
Yeah, don't expect us to play a game again either. But we will be taking.
No Bionic Commando, huh?
Hey, we can play the first one. Rearms. We can play Rearms. But we're going to be taking submissions throughout the entire month of March, and then I think we will have the vote take place some point in April while we're playing Trevor's games, and we will probably announce the games the first episode of Trevor's month, and then on the second episode we will probably announce the winner, and then our next batch of games as well. So be on the lookout for the next batch of games, the next schedule at the end of next month. So do we got anything else? Any other housekeeping stuff? All right, then. Well, we are missed checkpoints, and we are out. Peace.